Welcome to another edition of the Story Behind the Car. We're with Greg and his 1965 Chevy Corvair Monza. And I need to ask you about the Monza because I know they were
Yes.
some of them Monzas, some of them weren't?
Yeah, Monza was a trim level of the Corvair. So
Okay.
there was the base model, there was 500s, 700s, 900s, and then they added the Monza line, I think in 61, 62,
Okay.
which gave you carpeting, some fancier interior stuff.
And I just shot that blue one right over there, but Carl is in witness protection program, and he said he couldn't be on the camera.
Oh, okay.
Do you mind if I open the door?
No, go ahead.
And I saw you come in, and I thought, oh, what a great opportunity. And we were talking off camera. How long have you had it?
I bought it in July of 1999, so almost 25 years now.
Yeah.
And my birthday is in July. It was kind of a present to myself.
There you go. Yeah, one next month is July.
Yeah. And this one, the tachometer on this, that they never made a factory tachometer, so I custom made one. I drew up a design on AutoCAD, made a decal for it, and it's actually a SunPro Super Tack
Wow.
in there.
How cool. And you were telling me that you're a motorcycle guy. You love.
Yeah, I love having the wind in my hair.
Yeah.
And now the bike is just covered in dust because if it's ever a beautiful sunny day, I'd rather just drive with the top down.
And did you upgrade on the wheels and tires?
I did. Actually,
Yeah.
this is just last year. These are 15-inch alloys from VTO wheels. They're a copy of a Mini Light, which was a British racing wheel that was used back in the day. When these cars were raced on road tracks, and this is a clone of the type of wheel that was used for racing.
I always thought they were Mini because the Mini Cooper is what I thought it.
It could be from that too.
Yeah. So tell me about the engine. Such a unique.
Yeah, the Corvair. It's an air-cooled flat 6-cylinder engine. This has the camshaft. It's a gear-driven cam that actually sits below the crankshaft. And what we're looking at here, there's a cooling fan that spins around here.
Okay.
Forces air down through the shroud. The air goes down through cylinder jugs. The cylinder heads have fins on them as well, and the air is exited through the back of the vehicle. It's similar to what you would see on a Harley Davidson, where you have a separate cylinder jug and a cylinder head, and then there's separate push rod tubes for it.
And is this part of the heating duct?
Yeah, and that's actually, there's supposed to be a hose there. It's missing. It's supposed to take air from the shroud and then pump it through here.
Okay.
It's actually capped off in here, otherwise you lose cooling air.
Okay.
But it's just a very difficult hose to replace because you've got to get way up back behind it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things you learn to live the way it is.
Yeah, it's not really functional. So a lot of the Corvair guys, they delete that hose or they cap it off.
Yeah. And is it air-cooled or is it liquid-cooled?
Yeah, it's all air-cooled. It actually has an oil cooler on the side here, too.
Okay.
Down right in here is the oil cooler. So the air comes through the shroud. It's forced down through the cooler. And there's dampers here also, too. So the cooling air is actually thermostatically controlled. There's bellows back underneath the engine that when it heats up, it opens up those dampers and allows more air through.
Okay. And General Motors did a lot of engineering on this. Unfortunately, Ralph Nader got involved.
Yeah.
But they were pretty advanced for what
they were.
is.
And there's talks of them with Porsche helping develop the engine. And that's, from what I've read, actually GM developed the engine. They actually used this engine. They bought a Porsche, I believe it was a 356. And they used a Porsche 356 as a test bed for this engine.
Okay.
So actually the first 6-cylinder Porsche was Corvair powered.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this engine's been in a bunch of, Corvair, they had vans, they had pickup trucks, they had the famous ramp side where the ramp would drop down on the side of it and you could push a cart or something up into the bed of the truck.
On the side of the van,
Yeah, they had station wagons, obviously convertibles, 4-door, 2-doors.
And all the same motor, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was all the same engines. There were a few variants. They originally started out as 140 cubic inch, but then they were competing with Ford Falcon. Well, Falcon had a 145 cubic inch, or it may have been Valiant, but one of the competitors of the Corvair. So the next year they upped it to a 145 cubic inch. And they ran that until the 1964 year. Then they increased the stroke on the crank, which brought it up to 164 cubic inches. And that was from 64 to 69. They were all 164s.
Wow.
There were different variants available. In this particular model, there was a 95, 110, and 140 horsepower. This is the 110 horsepower variant, which is basically a higher compression 95 with a little bit different cam timing. There was also a 140 horsepower variant that had 4 carburetors instead of the one on each side.
Yeah.
Then the Corsa model had an available 180 horsepower turbocharger from 66 to 6 for 65 and 66. And then the Spider, that I think a lot of people have heard of, was introduced in 62 and a half, and that ran till 1964, and that had a 150 horsepower turbocharged engine. And the Spider is the older body style, like the other car you've seen here, which
is that the one that Jay Leno has?
I think he has a Corsa, this body style with the turbo.
Oh, okay.
He might have, it's a 65 or a 66, I believe.
Okay. And I'm assuming is this oil and that?
Yes.
I see one's transmission, I'm assuming
this
maybe?
is oil, this is the transmission fluid, and this is actually the rear axle.
Oh, wow.
And interestingly, most cars you have the engine, then the transmission, then the differential. These actually have the engine, differential, and then the transmission is actually in front of the differential. And there's a shaft within a shaft that spin.
Yeah.
So this has a dipstick for the differential oil.
Yeah.
And then obviously one for the transmission.
Boy, the engineering that must have gone into that, putting the differential in it.
And interesting with the Corvair Power Glide, it's a 2-speed Power Glide like other Chevys. It's a different Power Glide though, and if you notice, there's no park position. To park this car, you put it in neutral and you pull the handbrake.
I saw the handbrake, yeah.
So there's no park position on a Corvair Power Glide.
So would the spare go here, or would it normally go up front?
Yeah, it typically mounts here. It actually uses lug nuts to hold it in place, and then underneath that is the jack and a lug wrench. And the reason they did that, in fact, I was just talking to a gentleman earlier, if you put it in the front, that's considered the cargo space.
Oh, okay.
So when you're comparing, if you're going to buy a car and you're comparing a Valiant or a Falcon or a Corvair, well, they have, if GM stores the tire up there, they have to deduct that from how much cargo capacity the car has.
Yes.
So to advertise more cargo capacity, they put the tire back here.
And I was jumping to conclusions in my mind thinking it was a weight distribution.
No,
but cargo makes total sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were all in battle. The big three were in a battle all the time.
Like I mentioned earlier, with the cubic inch increase, just to have, and the horsepower battles, everyone had to increase their horsepower. So yeah, a lot of the current Corvair guys, they'll put the spare tire up front too to kind of equalize the weight distribution.
Yeah.
Although it drives perfectly fine with the tire in the back.
Wow, look how small the lever for the to release the hood. That's just amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't, and obviously it's not locked either.
Yeah. So can I open the passenger door?
Absolutely.
And then if we could open the front, I'd love to see that as well.
I've got some stuff in there right now, but
if you don't mind, if you'd rather not, we. Well, I love the dash too.
And interestingly, this car has seat belts. For the 1965 model year, you can see it has seat belts in the front.
Yeah.
It came standard with front seat belts. Optional was to have them deleted.
Oh, really?
Yes. And then another option was to have rear seat belts added. So a standard 1965 Corvair came with front seat belts and no rear seat belts.
Wow.
So I added the rear seat belts to it a few years ago.
I shot a 68 AMC, oh shoot, I think it was a Rebel. Mm-hmm. And 68 was, I love that door.
Yeah.
The bow tie.
You fling this open, and interestingly, this part and on the bow tie on the radio are the only places that you even see this. It doesn't say Chevrolet anywhere on this car.
Wow.
Other than the bow tie here and a bow tie on the radio.
Yeah.
So I've got a few things stored in here.
So you got your windshield washer and your brake.
And this car has been converted to a dual master cylinder.
Yes.
I believe in '67 that became standard for the federal highway. But as originally equipped, it came with a single master. So if you lose brake pressure on any one of your four wheels, you've lost the entire system.
Yeah.
So with the dual master cylinder, you'll either lose both front or both rear brakes, but you'll still have some brakes to work with.
Yep. This is really nice. And you carry a extra fan
Yeah,
belt?
yeah, I carry a spare fan belt, but honestly, I think that's the same belt that's been on there for almost 20 years.
Wow.
And it hasn't been an issue.
So I was starting to say about the AMC Revel in '68. First year they had, it was standard air conditioning.
Oh, okay.
In '68, standard.
Yeah, it was actually optional on the convertibles and the other Corvair variants.
Boy, I love that. That is really neat. I would have never, I bet you most people wouldn't have ever even thought it was there. Thought it was a release inside the car or something.
Yeah, that's the only spot for it.
Yeah. So what is your favorite feature of the car?
I think just the way it drives. It's not fast by any means. I mean, you basically have to give it a lot of gas just to keep up with traffic.
Yeah.
But handling and, it's a simpler form of driving.
Yes.
I mean, my daily driver is a modern Honda Accord. It has every feature you could ask for. It has a lot of power. But this is it's kind of like driving a big go-kart. It's kind of clunky, and you have to pump the brakes a little bit here and there. The wheels don't turn, quite straight sometimes. But it does handle. It turns beautifully.
I love the lines of it. It has so reminiscent of so many other Chevys.
Yeah.
The Camaro and Impala.
Yeah, and interestingly, the Camaro guys don't like to hear this, but this car, this body was designed probably around 1963 or so, and the same body designers that designed this car went on to design the first generation Camaro.
I believe it.
So that's why a lot of the body lines look similar.
Yeah.
And this was the style at the time too. So that's a lot of it. But I get mistaken for a Camaro every now and then too.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your passion and your knowledge. I wasn't expecting all that knowledge. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
And just absolutely love your Monza.
Thank you so much.
What did Monza mean? Do you know?
I don't. I believe it may have been a race.
Okay.
Because I know the Corsa there's a Corsa race.
Yeah. And I just love the black and yellow. Looks fantastic. Well, thank you again, and thanks for telling us the story behind your car.
Thank you, Tom.